Hi everyone.
Greetings to the world. Greetings to every single soul out there. This is Tribal Tea Talk, and we're happy to be with you again. Today, with this video, we will be touching on our methods concerning the garden, the backyard garden, our front yard garden that we did a few days ago. 2 days ago? Yeah. So we will be getting down into it. We will be answering some questions that our viewers posed, and some concerns, some things that they didn't quite understand, and we hope that this will benefit every single one of you, whether you asked a question or not.
So, one of the first things that we'd like to delve into for our viewers is the environmental challenges that we were having in the area and how exactly it affected us.
Well, the whole reason that you see this whole process taking place on the previous video is because for quite some time we've been battling with a twofold issue. However, the second issue of the twofold issue is caused mainly by the first issue, and that is there's a lot of rain. As a matter of fact, the most rain in the island, and that rain washes the soil. Put it plainly, washes it just like how you wash your clothes, completely clean, right? And that is terrible for the soil fertility. And so therefore the second problem is soil fertility. So when it comes on to our challenges, we had to take into consideration how do we get around the rain issue and excessive water, and how do we reverse soil infertility.
Now, this problem that we've been having, is it something unique? Is there any, reference, say, in indigenous tribal traditions that we can draw back from that would relate to this situation?
Well, the most famous example of this same problem rests in the heart of the Amazon rainforest. When they call them Mayans now, but when our very first ancestor, very different time from this, very ancient time, started to occupy the Amazon rainforest, they realized, hey, we have a lot of land, we have a lot of water, and we even have a lot of medicine in here, but we need to produce food. We need to be able to eat day to day. So when they set out, they realized, just as we did, too much rain equals infertility. Too much of a good thing can be very bad. And they had to discover how. And it would have been a long process. It would have been a process that would have taken them quite a few years. Firstly, to recognize the correlation between certain things. Traditionally, we have a method that's called Sweden agriculture, or slash and burn. Well, it's very demonized. What happens, you go into a forested area, you chop down everything, you wait for it to dry. When it dries, you light it a fire, and it burns, and you have a nice clear space to deal with. But what people don't know about that method is that the potassium and the phosphorus that are released when the plant matter is burnt and left behind in the form of ash and charcoal fortify the soil. It rebuilds the soil and helps the soil to hold plant life and to hold the more delicate plant life that we require for day-to-day eating. That method then evolved into what we call today biochar, which is the infusion of the soil that we're gardening in with charcoal. Charcoal acts like a sponge. Once you burn it without oxygen, or with very little oxygen as it is normally done, you're left with a material that is full of microscopic holes. It's porous. And just like a sponge, that structure will absorb moisture, absorb water, and hold it for a length of time and release it slowly to the plant. It will do the same for nutrients. And so therefore, biochar may be the greatest soil amendment that anyone globally has ever come up with. And we recognize our ancestors and pay them homage for this fantastic feat. And this is what we're replicating here in these raised beds, in these konokas. Konoka is Lokono Arawak language for raised bed or place of my inheritance, land of my inheritance.
Wow. So basically, the Great Amazon rainforest, you're saying that initially it was not as fertile the way how we know it today?
Yes, and that may be a bit surprising to everyone, but we must remember a very vital word in that name, and that is rain forest. So it is a forest, and yes, you have natural composting when leaves fall and rot and such. But remember that the Amazon is not just the name of a rainforest, but also the name of the largest, mightiest river in the world. And the Amazon is also home to the Orinoco River Basin, which is also an extremely large river. The Orinoco is also our ancestral river, and it is the Orinoco River Basin that our ancestors did leave from to come into the Caribbean, and hence they took that experience with them. The fight and the struggle to make the Amazon a fertile place would have taken years, and so they would have created a system that was passed orally from grandchild to granddaughter to grandson, from mother to daughter, mother to son, so on and so forth. It would have been the lifeblood of their existence, and it would have been the bedrock and the cornerstone of their whole, what you call, empire. It wasn't an empire, but we can get into that another time. Our people were agriculturally based, and so it was their first consideration. So when they set down and put in, their cassava sticks, their tomato seeds, their pumpkin seeds, they realized that so many land was not carrying it because of the rain. So regardless of the fact that you're getting all of this natural composting, as soon as the composted material is ready, the rains come, wash it into the river, and it's washed out into the Caribbean Sea. So what did we have to do? What did our ancestors have to do? They had to prevent the soil erosion using terracing, which is what we are mimicking with our beds, which are backed around with the building blocks. So no matter how the rain falls, the water will simply drain through and leave behind our soil. Also, they had to find a way not only to introduce fertility, but to maintain and keep it over the centuries. And that was the introduction of the biochar, the charcoal. It was Portuguese explorers that happened upon it the first time. When they found it, they called it terra preta. Because what our ancestors used to do, they used to get together in large work gangs and dig large trenches in the area that they wanted to plant. When they had cut down all of those trees and dug the trench, they dropped the trees, the branches, all of those things down into the trench. It was allowed to dry in the heat of the sun, and then they lit it ablaze. When it started to burn, covered it with the soil and allowed it to burn or petrify in limited oxygen conditions, which left behind charcoal. Then they would go in, dig it back up, break up the branches and such into a smaller size, a smaller gauge, and mix it into the soil and begin agriculture. The Portuguese recognized that there were strips of land throughout the Amazon that were black and beautiful and readily accepted any crop, whereas the soil right beside it was brown and wasn't doing so well. So that is how the colonizers discovered our ancestral method.
Wow. So, this just really goes to show that there's really nothing new under the sun. And for all the problems that we're facing today in modern, this contemporary era, it just causes one to really recall, history and the challenges that our ancestors faced and how they overcome them. So this is just a reminder that a lot of the problems that we're encountering, especially with now, there's a huge concern globally as to the food crisis and soil fertility, and how it is that we are going to ensure that we have crop yields that can sustain our society and sustain the world that we live in. So this is all really interesting. We'd like to delve into some of the questions that our viewers had and see how best we can answer them. One of the comments that we're going to address is a comment from Willie. So, she says, "Greetings, kindred. I got excited seeing this. Just what I've been looking for. I think I'd add a cardboard or newspaper barrier before adding the compost, manure, soils, etc. to do a better job at controlling growth of wild plants. I cried after the nutrition I packed into my last rainforest garden washed away just as my plants were starting to bear. How does this system prevent that? Blessed love and respect."
Thank you so much for your question, Willie, and we really appreciate it. So, you mentioned the cardboard and the newspaper. Fantastic method. Very, very good method. Being honest with you, I love that method, especially the cardboard. But in certain places in Jamaica, we have a huge challenge with termites. Termites are very opportunistic and they are going to move after whatever food source that is easiest for them to eat and digest. So a hardwood may not be the easiest thing for them to chew at. However, cardboard, being made from plants, attracts them. And once they get into that cardboard under the soil, they're going to start getting at your roots, and they're going to destroy everything pretty much. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I don't necessarily have a problem with weed growth per se, because the roots of the weeds attract also the beneficial bacteria and fungi that are natural to the location. Those fungi are used to those roots. So just like you wouldn't want to live anywhere else but your house, those beneficial fungi and bacteria that actually transport nutrients into the plants love to be around roots that they are used to. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. Now when it comes on to the method, how does this method prevent the loss of soil? As you can see, the beds are surrounded by these building blocks. These building blocks are barriers against the washing of the soil. So therefore, once they are put down properly, you can also use large stones. This is what our ancestors did, but I just had the building blocks on hand just floating around the yard, not really doing anything. So rather than making them a nuisance, I made them work for me. So that's really how we do it. We create a barrier. You can also use wood if you don't have a termite issue. I used to use wood on some of my beds, but that ended badly. So I hope that answers your question.
And one final question that we're going to take for today is one from Larissa. And she wants to know some of the feedback on the type of soil you have and how you're balancing it, tips for moisture, etc.
Hey Larissa, good question. The soil that we use is a mixture of the native soil, the soil that we find here, which over time we amended with vegetable scraps from our kitchen. Very important because, as I said before, the soil had been washed almost completely of its natural material, what we would have known in prep school, primary school as humus. Very, very important to sustain plant life. So we use that mixed with the biochar, which is the charcoal, the dark matter that you see in the video being added. This, as I said in earlier in this recording, that the charcoal acts as a sponge and it retains water, releases it slowly to the very fine hair-like roots of the plant. and it also traps nutrients and releases them slowly. So once the charcoal sits in the soil, is unmoved, it will be a repository, the plant's library then, full of the nutrients from A to Z that the plant needs. Um, and moisture, yeah, okay. Well, I hope that that answers your question. If you have any deeper questions, feel free to put them under this video.
That's it for today's video. We'd like to say thank you for listening. Thank you for staying tuned. And this is just what we are doing in our environment. As we like to say here, this is just life in the tropics. So, what may work for you may not work for us, and what may work for us may not work for you. But it's important that we share our ideas, share what's going on, what we are doing, the challenges that we're having, how we're overcoming them, and hopefully somewhere in the world may reach someone who may be having that problem and not quite sure how to overcome it. So, once again, we're just here to educate, stimulate, and motivate.
Guys, this has been Tribal Tea Talk, and as usual, we are happy to be in your polite company. Please stay tuned for the next feature. I promise you it will be extremely exciting. Thank you for your support as always. Love, respect, light, honor, all of those good things, and you stay safe.